Hello everyone, welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today I'm going to do my breakout player recap. So I'm going to be going through the 9 guys that I had before this season that I thought would be breakout players. I'm going to talk about if they were a hit, if they were a bust, or if they were kind of a push. So I'm going to have the stats for both seasons up on the screen, where they finished in terms of fantasy position, points per game, all that. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this one. I think it's kind of fun to look back and see how this turned out and the reasons that it turned out the way that it did. So without further ado, we'll get into it. First off, we had my quarterback breakout for this year. That was Mr. Gardner Minshew. Obviously, he had a great rookie year. Finished as the quarterback 19. All his stats are up on the screen there. I'm not going to read through each and every one of them. But, he played in 14 games, had 12 starts. He was the quarterback number 19 in 2019. 19.4 points per game. He was actually better in a points per game aspect this year, 21.4 points per game. He finished as quarterback 24. He only started 8 games, played in 9 this year, So if he would have had a full season, he probably could have made it up a little bit closer in tier to what I was expecting, but I think he still probably would have finished about the same as last year. So we're going to call him a flop. Obviously, everybody knows what happened with Jacksonville this year. They only won 1 game. They're going to be drafting Trevor Lawrence, most likely with the number 1 overall pick, so not good news for Gardner Minshew long term. If you guys have him in a Dynasty League, I think he's still probably worth holding on to if you're in a deeper Dynasty League. See if he gets traded somewhere else, gets a chance eventually at some point in time. Then next up, we got my buddy Joe Mixon. Last year, at the end of the year, he really produced. He was the number 13 running back at season's end, 13.6 points per game. 2020 was not kind to Joe Mixon. Obviously, he played, like the first 6 games. He was really only effective in one of them. That was his 3-touchdown game against Jacksonville. They started targeting him a little bit more in the receiving game, which was nice to see. Hopefully that continues forward next year. Hopefully they get some more offensive line help for him. If you're in a Dynasty League, he's definitely a buy low for me because that offensive line, it has nowhere to go but up. So having Joe Burrow there, having a better offensive line, getting Joe Mixon back and healthy, it's all going to equate to better success for him overall. He had 16.6 points per game this year, which was 3 points better than last year. He was definitely a flop this year in regards to breakout, but it could be next year or the year after that he breaks out for big success. And like I said, he's still young. He's got that long-term contract. Definitely a guy that I'm looking to buy in Dynasty Leagues. Definitely a buy low candidate. Then next up, we got Miles Sanders. And he has a lot of similarities to Joe Mixon here, He only was played in 12 games this year. He missed 2 and 2 to 2 different injuries, essentially. Last year, he finished as the running back 15 on the year, 12.9 points per game. A lot of his work came in the second half of the year. He was either a first or second round pick in this year's draft. I think he's probably going to go in the second round next year, but don't overlook him because he's definitely a guy that could finish as a top 12 running back pretty easily. He's running back 22 this year, 14.2 points per game, only in 12 games. I think his reception total goes back up a little bit more. He was really affected by the ineffective play of Carson Wentz, the offensive line being banged up as well, and his own personal health. So he's the guy that's definitely going to have a lot more success in 2021. And definitely, if you get the chance to pick him up in Dynasty, he's another buy low candidate at the running back position. But overall, he was a flop in terms of breakout. Then last but not least, at the running back position, we have David Montgomery. And, his rookie year was meh. It was pretty mediocre, honestly. Running back 24 finished, 10 points per game, played in all 16 games. That's positive there, though. It only got better in 2020. He was more effective on the ground, 1,070 yards, and only 5 more carries. So that's something you like to see, being more effective. His rushing touchdowns went up by 2. His receiving touchdowns went up by 1. Saw more targets. Part of that is because Tariq Cohen tore his ACL and was out for the year. But, with Allen Robinson kind of moving on and their lack of wide receivers, I would not be surprised if they use Tariq Cohen more out in the slot as a wide receiver. So definitely could have some value there as well for David Montgomery. Hopefully they get their quarterback situation figured out as well. But, he's the running back 6 in fantasy this year. It's 17.7 points per game, which is really, really good and definitely a solid campaign for him. And he's a guy that you're probably going to be able to get, in the second or third round next year. A lot of people are kind of overlooking him. I know he did have that great end of season run versus some weaker competition, but hey, when you play the teams that aren't that good, you got to take advantage of it. I'd be more worried if he did not take advantage of it. This was definitely a hit. Then we move over to wide receivers. Wide receiver was not quite as kind to us. We have Marquise Brown here. Pretty good rookie year, 7 touchdowns in 14 games. Wide receiver 46 finish, 10.1 points per game. This year he actually did play in all 16 games. His yards and his touchdowns both went up. Even ran the ball once for 1 yard. Played in all 16 games. Finished as a wide receiver 37. We were kind of hoping he could get up into that wide receiver 2 range. He's more of a borderline wide receiver 3 at this point in time. But, the Ravens offense, Lamar did struggle to throw the ball a lot more this year. Brown did struggle at the beginning of the year, but kind of came on later on, and that was definitely good to see. Hopefully that's a sign of things to come next year. If you guys have the chance to buy him in Dynasty, still, if people are low on him, I would go out and do it, and it's something that I'm definitely considering myself, and I already have him in a couple Dynasty leagues as well. The next up, we got Will Fuller, and Will Fuller is kind of an interesting story this season. So 2019, he had an okay year. Most of his stats came in one big game. Played in 11 games. Finished as a wide receiver 51 overall in the year. 11.9 fantasy points per game. This year, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins was gone. Stepped his game up. He only saw 4 more targets. He caught 4 more passes. But the production, 209 yards more. 5 more touchdowns. He had a streak, I think, of 6 games where he had a receiving touchdown. He only played in 11 games this year as well because he had that PED suspension that cost him the last 5 games of the season. But definitely a guy that if you can pick him up in Dynasty, he's probably going to be a sleeper next year too, kind of like in that Stephon Diggs territory of this year. But this is a guy that you want to target in your leagues. He finished as wide receiver 30, and he didn't even play the last 5 games. 17.2 points per game. That is 8th among wide receivers. Will Fuller goes to a good situation. He's going to miss the first game next season due to the PED suspension, but he's going to have 15 games of solid production for you as long as he stays healthy. And that's always been the question. This year he was relatively healthy, minus 1 little groin tweak. He really worked on his body last offseason, and it showed. So I'm going to chalk him up as a hit, even though it wasn't quite as big a hit that I thought it was. I said he could be a wide receiver 2, maybe even a wide receiver 1 upside. And he definitely had that upside if he would have been able to play all 16 games this season. Then probably one of the biggest misses in terms of breakout this year, Anthony Miller. This is a guy that I liked a lot, and unfortunately the Bears chose to only play him in 3 wide receiver sets essentially, which really limited his upside. Obviously he had the quarterback issues there as well. He saw a decrease in targets, decrease in reception, decrease in R yards, same amount of touchdowns. 1 more carry, but that's irrelevant. So he played in 16 games both seasons. And in 2019 he was wide receiver 56, 7.6 points per game. Then this year, wide receiver 68, 6.8 points per game. And he's still a talented wide receiver. They just choose not to use him like he should have been used. Coming down the stretch last year, he played very well. I thought that would kind of go into this year. Obviously, Darnell Mooney made a little bit of impact on that as well, coming out as a breakout in his rookie season. But they just didn't use Miller the right way. Hopefully, next year is better. Otherwise, if it's not better next year, he's definitely a buy low in Dynasty because I think if he has a change of scenery, he could definitely do a lot better. Then we move over to our tight ends. We got Mike Gesicki is the first one. And his numbers were pretty similar to 2019, honestly. Targets were down. The receptions were up just a little bit. The yardage was the biggest thing. It was way up. Had 1 more touchdown. Played in 1 less game, though. So in 2019, he was the tight end 12 with 8.1 fantasy points per game. 2020, he was the tight end 7 with 10.6 points per game. Pretty solid year for him overall. He still has that upside. He just quite hasn't hit it yet. Part of it, is Tua being a young quarterback, making mistakes, and not being able to hit his wide receivers and tight ends as well. But hopefully that gets better with Tua. I'm not a big Tua fan, as many of you already know, but it gets better whether Tua is there or they trade for Deshaun Watson, for say, which probably would kill me on the inside, but it's going to get better at some point in time. Gesicki, we're going to chalk up as a hit. It's kind of in the range that I thought he'd end up. I said probably tight end 8 range. So it wasn't that hard to do. I'm going to call it a hit, even though it's probably more of a push. Then we got Hayden Hurst. And, he's essentially the tight end number 2 with the Ravens. As you can see there, 39 targets, 30 receptions, 2 touchdowns in 16 games. Finished as the tight end number 36 in fantasy with 4.4 points per game in 2019. 2020, he got his full-time opportunity. He saw a lot more targets, 88, 56 receptions, 571 yards, 6 touchdowns. he wasn't a reliable tight end week in and week out, but he was definitely a guy that you could stream at the tight end position. He finished as the tight end 15, 9.3 points per game. If you guys played a 17-week schedule, he actually had a touchdown in week 17 that pushed him up to tight end number 10. So definitely somebody to kind of keep your eye out for again next season, especially going forward. We'll see if the new regime, Arthur Smith, Dave Ragone, see if they get him more involved as well. But with that being said, this is a recap of my breakout candidates for the season. So there's 5 misses or flops, and then what I would call 4 hits. I'm going to chalk up Hayden Hurst as a hit, even though he was probably more of a push at this point. I thought he'd probably be closer to tight end 1 territory. And technically, if you count week 17, he did get there. But like I said, want to see him make another leap next year as well. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this. I thought it'd be really interesting to do a recap kind of on some of the stuff that I talked about prior to the season and then what came out of it. And then in my next video, I'm going to look at some of my bold predictions going into the season. Things that I thought could happen but weren't quite as likely to happen. So bold predictions. See which ones I kind of nailed on the head, which ones I was real close to, and which ones were kind of way off target. But with that being said, if you guys are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. It really helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. And that's really one for you, the viewers. Talking your fantasy football, talking all the football news coming up this off season. We can talk about the Super Bowl preview as well, and that's going to be a real good one. Talking some DFS. We got the Super Bowl left for NFL DFS. If you guys are interested in NBA DFS, once again, I am thinking about putting up a couple of videos about that too as well. Just kind of see how it turns out, see how the community likes that as well. And then once again, fantasy baseball news is going to be coming out soon. Kind of once we get past the NFL season, going into baseball season, I'm going to be doing a lot of that as well. So if you guys like that type of stuff, be sure to let me know. Be sure to let your friends know as well. But with that being said, if you are a new or current subscriber who's yet to do so, also hit that notification bell down below. It'll let you know every single time I post up a new video. And with that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on my breakout picks. If you guys had any breakout picks of your own for this season, please let me know down in the comments. Let me know if they were hits, flops, or pushes as well. But once again, thank you guys for watching this video, taking the time out of your day. I really do genuinely appreciate you guys doing that. And I really hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.